Today I want to talk to you about a book that I just recently finished. It comes with my highest recommendations, and I want to tell every man that is listening to this right now that you need to pick up this book and read it. It is powerful. It is influential. It will make you want to be a better man, I believe, like it did me. And it is called American Ulysses, A Life of Ulysses S Grant by Ronald C. White. Now, in case you're not familiar with who Ulysses S. Grant is, he's the 18th President of the United States of America. He did many great things for this country that are not really recognized today because he's overshadowed by Lincoln, by Washington, by Kennedy. And the further away we get from some of these figures, the harder it is to get them into focus. And this book really does that. I only knew a few things about Ulysses S. Grant that actually one of the things I believed about him in the recent past was actually wrong. It dispelled a few myths for me. But the book is very well written. It was published in 2016. It is 659 pages long. As you can see, it's a thick book. But don't let that dissuade you from picking it up. Now, I bought this for around $10 at Books A Million on clearance. It typically goes for $35. I'd say it's worth it at $35. You want this book in your collection. This book made me want to be a better man. I read it and thought to myself, this is who I want to be when I grow up. Right? I'm 49 years old, but this is who I want to be when I grow up. What a remarkable figure. And if my boys, who are now 12 and 18, if they grow up to be like Grant, I wouldn't be happier. I just couldn't be happier. What an amazing figure in history he was. Now, let me read you the inside leaflet of this book because it will cut to this. It will kind of abbreviate what I really want to say, and I'll elaborate just a little bit. But listen carefully to what the leaflet of this book says to kind of give you a synopsis. In his time, Ulysses S. Grant was routinely grouped with George Washington and Abraham Lincoln in the trinity of great American leaders. But the battlefield commander turned commander-in-chief fell out of favor in the 20th century. In American Ulysses, Ronald C. White argues that we need to once more review or revise, I should say, or we should revise our estimates of him in the 21st century. Based on 7 years of research with primary documents, some of them never examined by previous Grant scholars, this is destined to become the Grant biography of our time. White, a biographer exceptionally skilled at writing momentous history from the inside out, shows Grant to be a generous, curious, introspective man and leader, a willing delegator with a natural gift for managing the rampaging egos of his fellow officers. His wife, Julia Dent Grant, long marginalized in the historic record, emerges in her own right as a spirited and influential partner. Grant was not only a brilliant general, but also a passionate defender of equal rights in post-Civil War America. And this is where Grant really impressed me a lot, and I think he would you too. It says, after winning election to the White House in 1868, he used the power of the federal government to battle the Ku Klux Klan. He was the first president to state that the government's policy toward American Indians was immoral, and the first ex-president to embark on a world tour. And he cemented his reputation for courage by racing against death to complete his personal memoirs. Published by Mark Twain, it was widely considered to be the greatest autobiography by an American leader, but its place in Grant's life story has never been fully explored until now. One of those rare books that successfully recast our impression of an iconic historical figure, American Ulysses gives us a finely honed, three-dimensional portrait of Grant the man, husband, father, leader, writer, that should set the standard by which all future biographies of him will be measured. Now, there's been many biographies written of Grant, and what I like about this is that, now I've not read them, but from my understanding, I can tell you that that some of them miss the mark. And biographies that are written, when there's a voluminous amount of biographies written about one man, you're going to run across aberrations and discrepancies in the accounts where one book will disagree against another, and that maybe not widely and maybe not largely, but I really trust this author when he talks about, he says 7 years of research, but if you dig deeper, you're going to find out that It seems like, if I'm not misjudging this, it might be closer to 50 years of research. And he states why at the end of the book. Now, I will tell you, by the time I got to the end of this book, I was a little emotional because I felt intimately invested in Grant. I liked him that much. You know, you would think that great generals, because he's one of the greatest generals our history, not just of the history of the United States, but the history of the world. He was one of the greatest generals ever to walk the earth. His battle plans were par to none. He was calm, cool, and collected on the field, and he was known for his aplomb. He was known for his composure. He had a very level head. You very rarely ever saw him get angry. He never yelled. You didn't hear him yell or scream, and only twice did anybody ever hear him curse. That's the kind of man he was. And you would think that a man like that would have been like that his entire life, from the time of boyhood. But as it turns out, Grant was a very soft-spoken young boy, didn't even like to shoot, didn't even like to hunt, and he had an aversion to it. And yet he turned out to be one of the greatest generals of all time. He helped Lincoln defeat the Confederate Army. I would say helped. He pretty much is the one who defeated the Confederate Army. And during the time when slavery and secession from the United States was such a monumental thing, and he overcame it. And he employed men under him like Sheridan and Sherman, which have great historical value. And these are men who I want to read more about now. But he led the Union to victory over the Confederates. But when he did, he dismissed the Confederates at the end of the war after Appomattox, and he with such grace. He let them ride their own horses and take their own weapons home, so they go home and farm and take care of their families. He didn't humiliate them any further. He did not disgrace them any more than they already were with defeat. And this was remembered by the Confederates. Believe it or not, this was remembered very well by the Confederates, even when Ulysses S. Grant died. They stood by his coffin. They were at his funeral to honor him because they remembered how gracious he was to them. He was a very modest, a very humble man. He believed greatly in civil rights and freeing black people. He fought for them greatly, like nobody in history ever has. We often look at Abraham Lincoln as being the pioneer of all this, but in reality he was, but Lincoln could have never received this stature in history that he had without Grant. Grant, who was a little bit ambiguous, or ambivalent maybe is the word for, about slavery at the beginning of the war, became an ardent defender of African Americans. And he did this throughout all of his presidency. He fought for them. He fought against the Ku Klux Klan. He fought to protect. He actually had to institute military law in southern states because someone needed to protect African Americans and white Unionists who were being tortured and killed and intimidated by the Confederates that wanted to sway the votes at the polls. And so he fought for them. And not only did he fight for them, but as I've already said before when I read this leaflet, he's also the first president to come out and say that the way the government was treating American Indians was immoral. And so, that's something that's left out of history a lot. Grant was a man of the people. He was very modest. He was very humble. When he would go anywhere, he would always show up in a way that people would have not recognized a great general or an ex-president. He was dressed in like everyday clothes, modest suits, and he wasn't one to walk around bearing his stripes and his badges. He believed himself to be a man of the people. He treated them as such. He made time for people. He talked to people. But he was someone who worked at ground level. And he really didn't have any smudges or black marks on his character inside of it. Well, during his presidency, he became kind of guilty by association, but he himself as a man did not really have any smudges on his character. He was forthright. He was a model of marriage. Him and his wife, they loved each other dearly. Julia Grant was a woman that any man would want to marry. She was sweet, kind, loving, supportive, and she was very faithful to him as he was to her, and it was a love affair the kind that we always want. And many people who knew Grant at the time found it remarkable that everybody in that family actually liked each other, which is not uncommon. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing to bring up because it's not something that we mention quite often, but when you run across a whole entire family that actually likes each other, it's worth noting. And it was noted in his family. But him and Julia always stayed with each other. I mean, in terms of the marriage, nothing ever fractured it. They loved each other dearly. They were oftentimes seen when someone walked up on them when they were by themselves. They would see them sitting there holding their hands, talking to each other like two new lovers. And but that's the kind of man he was. He was a great father, but he was a great general, a great leader of men, a great example of moral courage, which is something he talked about quite a bit. And Grant's the kind of man that I believe every man would want to be. He impressed me that much. He made me want to be a better man. And so I highly recommend picking up the book to find out what he's all about, to dig in deeper more than what I've just said. While the book is thick, it's 659 pages long, the chapters themselves are not that long. They usually range from like 15 to 20 pages a piece. If you read one a day, you can be through the book in about a month. And let me tell you something, when you're done reading it, you will never forget this book. You will never forget Grant the man. Let me read a little excerpt to you because I don't want to make this this video too long. And this will show you how humble he was. He was given a toast in Hamburg. He was being toasted. He was being toasted by Consul John M. Wilson in Hamburg. When he was traveling the world, he was hailed everywhere as King of America. This is after he has served 2 terms as a president. That's how well liked he was. And he went and traveled the world, but while he was in Hamburg, he was being toasted by John M. Wilson. And so Grant had something to say about his toast. Here's what he said. He goes, "I must dissent from one remark of our consul to the effect that I saved the country during the recent war." He said, "If our country could be saved or ruined by the efforts of any one man, we should not have a country, and we should not now be celebrating our 4th of July. What saved the Union was the coming forward of the young men of the nation. They came from their homes and fields as they did in the time of the giving everything to the country. To their devotion we owe the salvation of the Union. The humblest soldier who carried a musket is entitled to as much credit for the results of the war as those who were in command." That's the kind of commander he was. He was very humble. He didn't take all the credit for himself. But man, I tell you what, he really does deserve the most credit for winning the Civil War. He knew how to employ great men like Sheridan and Sherman. And by the way, guys, all these guys had amazing beards. All of them had amazing beards. And you know what? You should watch another video of mine about bearded presidents, facts about bearded presidents. Ulysses S. Grant obviously had a beard. And something I'll share with you that I shared in that video was that every president the United States has ever had that had a beard was a Republican. But he was a very successful president. He was very noteworthy. And he was someone that I think every man would inspire to be. Pick up this book, read it for yourself, judge for yourself, and let it move you. And when you do, let me know. Leave your comments in the box below, and I will read them. I would love to hear what you have to say about it. And I'm sure you can find it at Books A Million real inexpensive. Like I said, I bought for $10. It's normally about $35, but if you have to pay $35 for it, do it. Because you're going to want to keep this on your shelf. You're going to want it in your collection. And some people say, well, I don't like to read. It's too hard. I get too tired. You need to develop a good habit of reading, even if it's just a little bit every day. But like I said, it won't really take you that long to get through, about a month if you take 1 chapter a day. It won't weigh you down, and you're going to be engrossed by the man, Ulysses S. Grant. All right, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.